Hi folks, and welcome to Developer News, episode 1 by Coder. So let's get straight to it. Today's headlines are that JCenter and a bunch of other repositories are to be shut down. JUnit 5.7.1 has been released. GitHub reduces marketplace fees for app developers. Kotlin 1.4.30 has been released. Gradle 6.8.2 released, and NPM 7 becomes general availability. And we're going to mention something about events. Okay, so first of all, JCenter, Bintray, GoCenter, and ChartCenter are going to be taken down on May the 1st. These are controlled by JFrog. Now, the first two, Bintray and JCenter, are for Java dependencies. GoCenter is for Go dependencies, and ChartCenter is for Cloud Helm charts for like Kubernetes and stuff. The JFrog platform will still be available. So if you are using any of these repositories, you need to take action fairly soon. So on May the 1st, Bintray, JCenter, GoCenter, and ChartCenter, all run by JFrog, will be shut down. They're currently in the process of being sunset, phrase they used, I think. The first two, Bintray and JCenter, are for Java dependencies. GoCenter is for Go dependencies, and ChartCenter is for Helm charts. So JFrog platform will still be available, and these services that are being sunset by JFrog, so JFrog platform will still be available. And given that these services are being sunset by JFrog, if you are somebody who publishes to these repositories, you need to think about publishing them to alternate repositories. And if you're somebody who pulls in dependencies from any of these repositories, you need to start looking at taking action now. And more than likely, if you're using something like JCenter, the repositories will be available from somewhere else anyway, like Maven Central, but it's worth taking a look anyway. Okay, so the important dates to remember are February the 28th, 2021. No more submissions to these repositories. So if you're publishing, you won't be able to publish after that date. May the 1st, 2021, these services will be shut down. So even if you're pulling as a client, you will no longer be able to do so after May the 1st. Okay, so what are the alternatives? If you're using Java, you can use Maven Central. If you're using Go, you can use package.go.dev. And if you're using Helm, you can use artifacthub.io. And there may be others as well, like Bitnami. These are some key alternatives. Now, another thing you need to take a look at is your Gradle and Maven scripts. You may need to update the repositories in your build.gradle and your settings.xml file if you're using Maven. Now, Sonatype, who maintains Maven Central, have put out some announcements. They've streamlined the deployment process to make it easier for publishers to get their data, for developers to get their artifacts into Maven Central. So if in the past you've had trouble, they've made it easier now, and they'll be looking to support people moving across. Another thing to be careful of is that if you've got projects that use some kind of old, fairly unmaintained libraries, but they do something useful for you, it's possible that the maintainers of those libraries may not move them across in time. They may just, because they're not maintained, they may just not bother doing it, or they may not have got around to it in time. And so you may lose those libraries. So that's something to be careful of, and just keep that in mind when you're looking after your projects. But go ahead and have Google. There's lots written about it and lots of companies supporting it and getting busy working to resolve these issues. Okay, JUnit 5.7.1 has been released on February the 4th, 2021. It's mostly bug fixes. Most actual improvements came with 5.7.0 in September 2020. But if you're using JUnit, it's usually worth staying up to date. Okay, GitHub has reduced their marketplace fees. So if you're an app developer and you produce apps that go into the GitHub marketplace for apps, the share for app developers has been 75% for quite a long time. Now the fees have been reduced such that the share for developers is now 95%. So the fees are only 5%. And this applies from January the 1st, 2021. Okay, Kotlin 1.4.30 has been released. It's the last incremental release of the 1.4 batch of releases. There are plenty of experimental features. The Kotlin Gradle plugin gets a config cache support, so your build should be faster after the first one. Compilation time has been reduced. There's plenty more in there too. So if we take a quick look. Okay, so looking at this page, you can see lots of information about all kinds of kind of low-level features that have been added. Gradle project improvements, which is what we've already talked about. Standard library, local agnostic API for lowercase, uppercase, string, text, etc. Serialization updates, there's all kinds of stuff. There's some language features, JVM record support. It's currently experimental, but it looks quite interesting anyway. This is records in Java. Okay, so if you take a look at this page, you'll see that there's all kinds of interesting stuff. Some experimental features. The JVM IR compiler backend reaches beta. Also, we've got Kotlin JS, lazy initialization of top-level properties, language features, some sort of JVM record support. It looks like it's experimental, etc., etc. So it's worth having a look at that page. Okay, and next up we have Gradle 6.8.2 released. You can update using the Gradle wrapper with that command that's on the screen now. There's Kotlin compilation improvements, which we've already talked about from the Kotlin announcements. There's other performance improvements. You can also specify a vendor for your specific JDK. You can also select consistent dependency resolution between runtime and compile time. You have support for dealing with flaky tests during reporting, so you can rerun only the tests that failed. Let's just have a quick Google for that as well. Okay, that's on the 5th of Feb 2021. If we take a look at the release notes. So again, it mentions the Kotlin stuff there, some improvements to the Java toolchain support. This is the mentioning of the specific vendor we talked about. So there's other stuff in here, so it's worth looking at. We haven't given a comprehensive list of all the kind of small improvements that have been done, so it's worth checking out the release if you get a chance. Okay, next up is that npm 7 becomes general availability on February the 2nd, 2021. It's now the default version when you install npm. The new features include workspaces, auto installation of peer dependencies, but there are some breaking changes, so you want to be careful. So let's just Google that. You can read the breaking changes on the announcements blog. So it's worth having a look here. I won't go through it in detail now, but it's definitely worth taking a look if you use npm and you want to make sure that your builds still work. Okay, next up in events, we've got only one to announce today, which is the IntelliJ Idea Conference, which is on February the 25th at 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock Central European time, I believe. You can register at this following URL, so definitely take a look. Okay, and don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and comment if you've got any suggestions about news to be included or you would like your event or tech announcement featured in next week's episode. Okay, thanks for listening.